In the last video, I looked at rich monasteries. Millionaire monasteries was the title. We also dipped into the idea that you can only really sell something to somebody if you can make it complicated. If you can complicate it so that it's out of their reach, and if you can also create a scarcity. Nobody sells salt water at the ocean. Nobody sells coals in Durham. It's a place in the north of England that traditionally had loads of coal until the woke crowd closed them all down. But that's another story. There was an unlimited supply of fuel, as it were. So you can only create. Now, we're talking about God. The Orthodox prayer, my favorite Orthodox prayer, the one I always come back to, O God, who is at all, everywhere present, filling all things. If we really soak that up, I just keep coming back to it. God, who is at all times present, filling all things. If that is the case, well, then God is filling this moment full. It's not 50% God, 20% God. People talk about sacred objects and sacred places, sacred meals, that like the Eucharist, the real presence of God. Can God be unreally present? It's worth thinking about. Can God be present 50%, 20%? A God who is infinite, filling all things and places? If we start to think he is, then God becomes the God of my box, my institute, but not the God of yours. The God who's confectioned at the hands of my magic ministers and not at the hands of your magic ministers. A God so complicated that only the magic ministers can decipher him for us with their magic outfits and their magic, shall we say, presence, persona. They don't have to live in the real world with the real world struggles. They can talk about poverty, but they're supported by multi-million pound trusts. Their dentistry's taken care of. The landlord will never put up their rents. They'll never have to worry about having a roof over their head for the rest of their days. And yet they can preach to us about trust in providence. Trust in providence with a £29 million estate, with bank accounts making passive income for them, with a board of trustees taking care of all of that. There's a paradox here, and that allows them to get on waxing lyrical about trusting in God. Easy to trust in God with a multi-million pound bank account. And even if they don't dip into it to go on holiday here, there, and everywhere and to eat the finest foods and drink the finest wine, the money's still there. The money's still there, and it's not circulating. It wouldn't have been there for a St. Anthony of the desert. It wouldn't have been there for a St. Francis of Assisi. It wouldn't have been there for Jesus Christ, who said to his disciples, go fishing, and in the fish's mouth you'll find a coin. You'll find 2 coins. Do you know? Just living on divine providence. It's very hard to live on divine providence when you're living on passive incomes generated by millions. So the middlemen, the expensive middlemen, the caste, the clerical caste, it's found in all religions. All religions start off with a simple founder, a Jesus, a Buddha, a Prophet Muhammad, with a very simple message. Muhammad's message was very, very simple. The earth is already sacred. Bow down before your Lord 3-5 times a day. You know, you don't need a middleman to do that. And then come the scholars, come the lawyers, come the imams, come the sheikhs, to complicate it, arguably, to say, oh, no, 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 it's far too complicated, way more complicated than that. There's this stage and then there's that stage. And if you really want to find this God who's ever so far away and hard to find, you're going to need to undergo these steps. Well, it's lucky we've got expensive spiritual exercises to help you get there. We've got just the right team of people to help you achieve your goals. And the whole thing moves. People go on retreats, millionaires, rich people from the world, rich and successful people with a hole in their hearts because the world hasn't taken care of the spiritual. And they enter a world that's quiet rather than noisy. They enter a world that seems closer to nature, a world where maybe they don't even have an internet connection for a while. And it does them good. They get a dopamine detox. Their serotonin levels grow and increase. People are nice to them, not looking at them like a number. It's away from the rat race. And they think, wow, I'm cured. This is the truth. This is it. This is the answer. Just had a dopamine detox, a serotonin blast. There's a psychological explanation as well as a spiritual. But then such people say, I've found the meaning of life. Here, have some of my thousands. I'll leave you dowries. You can pray for me when I get to heaven. You can pray for me when I die so that I get to heaven, rather. And thus, we find that the Sufi ashrams, if that's what they're called, the monasteries of this world grow rich. Their task force, their workforce, don't get paid, don't have children, don't ask for a slice of the will, don't take them to court because they've been taught blind obedience to the authorities. So these systems grow remarkably wealthy over time. And that's just the thing. God is present always filling all things. Nowhere God isn't. And yet, God is in these magic boxes, in these magic lands, in these magic ashrams and churches and monasteries, in a way that requires millions of pounds to box God in, as it were, to provide the God experience for people. You can only sell something when you make it scarce, and you can only sell something when you make it complicated enough that you need the real experts to explain it to you. Of course, there's another thing here. You can only sell something like this when you create the fear of hell, when you create the real fear that if I miss this God, who is everywhere present, filling all things, then I could end up in an eternal conscious torment. If I speak out against the experts of this God, who's ever so hard to find, ever so scarce, ever so complicated, if I get my theology wrong in any area, then I could end up in eternal conscious torment. And the fear of it, if I leave this sacred clan, then the devil will come running after me. Again, if one looks at the scriptures, the early scriptures, if one looks at the Bible, one will not find this. A brilliant author to look at this is Ethan Barr, who explores the idea that hell is way overrated from what Jesus actually taught, and especially what the Old Testament, the Tanakh, which was Jesus's holy scriptures, have to say. I'd highly recommend that book because often fear is the mechanism of the monastic millions. Often fear is the mechanism of control behind the machines of the spiritual industries. There's so much nuance could be added to this. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's complicated, isn't it? At the end of the day, people do need places of retreat, places of spiritual refreshment. People do need a place where there's a radicality of commitment. People do need teaching and instruction. But at the same time, there is this question of the paradox of the poor monk supported for life by a trust fund that the richest people in the world would be envious of. I offer this for your consideration. God bless. Hope it's useful. There's always multiple angles. There's always multiple ways of looking at the same reality. That's why I keep coming back to this beautiful book, Opening the Hand of Thought by Kosho Uchiyama.